All right, everyone, buckle up, because today we're taking a deep dive into the world of lectins. You know, those little proteins that can sometimes cause a bit of a stir in our diets.
That's right. Lectins have definitely gotten some attention lately. And today we're going to sort through the facts and figure out how to navigate them in a way that makes sense for you.
Perfect, because it seems like lectins are in so many foods, especially plant-based ones.
Yeah, you're right. They are found in a wide variety of foods, which is why this deep dive is so important.
So to kick things off, can we start with a simple definition? What exactly are lectins?
Well, think of them as tiny proteins that love to latch onto carbohydrates. Like, really love to. And those carbohydrates, they're on the surface of our cells.
Okay, that makes sense. But why do we care about them clinging to our cells?
It's all about where they're clinging in our bodies, like if it's happening in our gut. Well, that's where things can get a little tricky.
Oh, I see. So it's not like lectins are inherently bad. It's more about how they might be interacting with our digestive system.
Exactly. It's all about that interaction. Sometimes it's no big deal, but sometimes it can make it harder for our bodies to absorb all those good nutrients from our food.
Ah, that makes sense. And I imagine it could lead to other issues too, right? Like digestive discomfort.
You got it. That's a common one. Bloating, gas, things like that. If you're sensitive to lectins, you might notice those symptoms after eating foods that are high in them.
So basically, it's about knowing which foods are high in lectins and then understanding how to prepare them in a way that minimizes any potential problems.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. What are some of those high lectin foods we should be mindful of?
Well, the usual suspects are definitely legumes. Things like kidney beans, black beans, lentils. They tend to be higher in lectins, especially when they're raw.
Okay, so beans are on the watch list. What else?
Grains, especially whole grains like wheat, barley, and rice. And then we have the nightshade family: tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, and peppers. They've got lectins too.
Wow, so it's really variety foods, many of them staples in a lot of diets.
Right. Even some nuts and seeds can have significant lectin contents, like raw almonds and cashews.
Okay, I'm starting to see why people get concerned about lectins. It sounds like they're pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, they can seem a little ubiquitous, but the good news is there are things we can do to reduce the lectin content in these foods.
That's reassuring. So how do we tackle those lectin levels? Where do we even begin?
Honestly, one of the most powerful tools is simply proper preparation.
Okay, so it's not about completely avoiding these foods, but about preparing them in a smarter way.
Exactly. And when it comes to those legumes we talked about, like beans, soaking is key.
Soaking, like just letting them sit in water, how does that help?
Well, think of those lectins as little hands grabbing onto complex sugars. Soaking helps to break down those sugars, making it harder for the lectins to hold on.
Interesting. So soaking kind of weakens the lectin's grip.
Yeah, you could say that. It makes them a little less likely to cause trouble in our gut.
I like that. Soaking. 1 point for Team Human. But soaking alone isn't enough, right? I mean, we cook beans.
You're absolutely right. Cooking is the next step, and it's a crucial one. Heat helps to further break down those lectins.
So it's like a 1-2 punch. Soaking to weaken them, then cooking to really neutralize them.
Exactly. And it's especially important for beans, like kidney beans. They've got a type of lectin called phytohemagglutinin that can be pretty potent if it's not dealt with properly.
Okay, kidney beans, I'm hearing you. Soaking and thorough cooking are a must. But what about those time crunches? Does a quick rinse and a short boil do the trick?
Well, I'd say it's better than nothing, but to really be on the safe side with those tougher beans, especially kidney beans, soaking is really your best bet. It helps to neutralize those lectins and avoid any digestive surprises.
All right, no shortcuts with kidney beans. Got it.
And another important tip, even after soaking and cooking those beans, make sure to rinse them well.
Rinse them. Why is that important?
Rinsing helps get rid of any residual lectins and those broken down complex sugars. It's like an extra layer of protection for your digestion.
Okay, so we've got the bean blueprint: soak, cook thoroughly, and rinse.
Yeah.
3 steps to lectin peace of mind.
Exactly. And now that we've covered the basics of beans, let's move on to another lectin hotspot: grains.
Grains. Okay, I'm ready. Let's hear it.
So with grains, we're kind of looking at similar strategies to beans. Soaking is a good one. And fermenting, too.
Fermenting. Oh, like sourdough bread.
Exactly. That long fermentation process, it really does wonders for breaking down those complex sugars and lectins, makes it easier on the digestion.
I knew there was a reason I love sourdough, so sourdough gets a thumbs up. What about other grains? Like, if I soak rice or oats overnight, does that help?
Absolutely. Soaking those grains can definitely make a difference. Might not be quite as dramatic a change as with beans, but it's still a good move.
Oh,
Oh, and have you ever tried sprouting grains?
sprouting, like little sprouts on quinoa or wheat.
Yep. Those sprouts aren't just for show, you know. They actually help break down those pesky lectins. Plus, they unlock extra nutrients. It's a win-win.
All right, sprouting is going on my to-do list.
Yeah.
But what about those other foods we talked about? The tomatoes, peppers, I can't really soak those, can I?
You got it. Soaking isn't really an option there. But with nightshades, the trick is peeling and deseeding.
Peeling and deseeding. So most of the lectins are hanging out in the skin and seeds.
You got it. Getting rid of those parts makes a big difference.
Okay, that makes sense. But gotta be honest, I'm a bit of a lazy cook sometimes. Is it really that important to peel and deseed? What if I just, like, cook them for a long time?
Poofing helps, yeah, but it's not quite as effective as getting rid of that skin and the seeds. Think of it this way. The skin is like a little shield protecting those lectins inside. Peeling lets the heat in, to really do its job.
All right, you've convinced me. A little extra effort goes a long way. What about nuts and seeds? Almonds, cashews, those are high in lectins too, right? What's the best way to handle those?
You're right, those can be tricky too. But guess what? Soaking comes to the rescue again. A good soak can help break those lectins down.
Soaking. It's the MVP of lectin reduction. Anything else that can help with nuts and seeds?
Roasting can help too. And of course, choosing sprouted nuts and seeds is always a good idea. They've already had a head start on breaking down those lectins.
Okay, so I've covered legumes, grains, nightshades, nuts and seeds. What about dairy? Earlier you mentioned that it could be a source of lectins too.
That's right. Dairy products from animals fed a grain-based diet can contain lectins. So if you're trying to be mindful of lectins, opting for A2 dairy or dairy from grass-fed animals can be a good option.
Got it. A2 or grass-fed. Good to know. So it sounds like it really all comes down to being aware of what we're eating and how we're preparing it.
Absolutely. Simple but powerful stuff. Soaking, cooking, peeling, deseeding, sprouting. We've got a whole toolkit for taming those lectins.
I love that. It's about having those tools and then, like you said, being mindful, making choices that feel good for our bodies.
Exactly. And you know what? It's not about being perfect or eliminating lectins altogether. It's about finding that balance, enjoying a variety of foods, and just being aware of the choices we're making.
I like that approach. It
Yeah.
takes the pressure off. But before we move on, there's one more thing I'm curious about. You mentioned earlier that there are some lectins we should just avoid completely.
Oh, right. That's important. The biggest one, raw kidney beans.
Raw kidney beans. Okay, why are those a no-go?
They contain a type of lectin that's particularly potent, phytohemagglutinin. And if those beans aren't cooked properly, well, let's just say it can lead to some serious digestive distress.
Oh, wow. Okay, noted. No sneaking raw kidney beans for me. Anything else we should be extra cautious about?
Unripe fruits, especially green bananas and underripe melons, they tend to have higher levels of lectin, so best to wait until they're nice and ripe.
Makes sense. Let those fruits reach their full potential before we dig in. Any other lectin no-nos?
If you're particularly sensitive to lectins, it might be worth limiting your intake of whole wheat and other high lectin grains, even if they're cooked. And being mindful of nightshades, especially when they're raw. Just something to keep in mind.
This is so helpful. It's like a roadmap for navigating the world of lectins. We've got the high lectin foods, the best ways to prepare them, and the ones to avoid. Lectin code. Cracked.
I think you've got it. I hope everyone listening feels a little more empowered now, to make those informed choices about their diet and to enjoy all those delicious foods without unnecessary worry.
Me too. It's all about taking control, listening to our bodies, and finding that sweet spot that works for us. But before we wrap things up, there's one more thing I'd love to touch on. We've talked a lot about the potential downsides of lectins and how to minimize those. But earlier, you hinted at something really interesting, the possibility that some lectins might actually be beneficial. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff, really. There's so much research still being done on lectins, but some studies are actually showing that certain types might have some pretty cool health benefits.
Really? Like what?
Well, for instance, some lectins seem to act as antioxidants, and some even have anti-inflammatory properties. So there's potential there for protection against chronic diseases.
That's amazing. So it's not just a matter of lectins are bad, avoid at all costs. There's so much more to the story.
Exactly. It's a great reminder that nutrition is rarely black and white, isn't it? There are always nuances.
I love that. It's about embracing that complexity and being open to new discoveries. Because like you said, research is always evolving.
Right. And, even with all this information about lectins, the most important thing is to listen to your own body.
That's so true. What works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding what makes you feel your best.
Exactly. Pay attention to how you feel after eating certain foods. If you notice any bloating, discomfort, anything like that, it might be a sign that you need to adjust how you're preparing those foods or maybe reduce your intake a bit. Or maybe, it's something else entirely.
Right. It's like a personalized experiment, figuring out what works best for you.
And if you're ever unsure, it's always a good idea to chat with a healthcare professional or a registered dietitian. They can help you sort through everything and create a plan that's tailored to your individual needs.
Absolutely. Professional guidance is invaluable when it comes to something as personalized as our diets. But I think the biggest takeaway for me today is that we don't need to be afraid of lectins.
I agree with you there. Knowledge is power, right? Now that we understand more about what lectins are, where they're found, and how to manage them, we can make informed choices and really enjoy all those delicious foods without unnecessary worry.
Exactly. And we've got a whole arsenal of tools to help us out along the way. Soaking, cooking, peeling, deseeding, sprouting. It's all about finding what works for you.
And never stop learning. The world of nutrition is constantly evolving. There's always something new to discover. So stay curious, stay open-minded, and keep exploring.
Love it. Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of our lectin deep dive. I hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as I have.
Me too. It's been a pleasure chatting about all things lectin with you.
And hey, if any of you listening have any lingering questions, any aha moments, or just want to share your own lectin experiences, come find us on social media. We love connecting with all of you.
Absolutely. We're always eager to hear your thoughts and continue the conversation.
So until next time, happy cooking, everyone. And remember, knowledge is power. So go out there and conquer those lectins.